Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Babbling Nines video with myself and Mike today. What's going on, Mike? Is it time to panic? We were sat here 4 weeks ago saying, do not panic, trust the process. We've got a strategy. It's all going to be fine. It's now going into August, and we're in the same situation. There's been a lot of different stuff with striker targets collapsing, the midfield targets collapsing. No one wants to join us. When we're recording this, Wan-Bissaka might want to join us. He might not. So
Fulcrum
talk to
might
me.
want to join us, might not.
Yeah. Talk to me about the current situation. Are you still as confident as you were 4 weeks ago?
I'm still confident, right? And the reason I say it, me and Sloth did one on Hammer's chat, and we talked about obviously that there's been some sentiment that we're lurching into a disaster or walking into disaster. I'm adamant if we sign 2-3 players this week, people will be far more infused about where we are. And we're on course with other clubs in the league. Other clubs in the league, if you look at it on average across the entire league, 3.4 is the average signings per club.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to round it up, we are behind by one player. If you want to do what you should do, if it's 3.4 and round it down, we're bang on course with other
Does
clubs.
Foderingham count as a signing?
Well, it is a sign, isn't it? We identified that we needed a third goalkeeper, one with experience and homegrown.
Yeah.
We got that, and it cost us essentially the agent fee and signing on fee plus his wages. So
Yeah.
we did what we needed to do. We've done that quickly and identified it. We've also brought in the manager's top defensive kind of player in Max Kilman, and we only got one of the best young talents out of Brazil. We wanted to come back with two, but we only got one. And the main reason being because we would have got Kasova. However, they realised how badly and how poorly they handled that situation in Brazil by calling him a donkey, putting down a low fee, a low kind of value, and then realising they massively miscalculated and then kept moving the goalposts.
Yeah.
So I think we were right in not following those goalposts and then going for Kasova. But I still feel like, based on what I've just said, we're in a good place. We still have 3 weeks to the season, 5 weeks of the window to go, or 4 weeks now, give or take. So I'm still relatively calm. If we're still in the same situation in 2 weeks' time, then I will start to say we're not doing enough. From a board, from Tim Stuyton, there is just not being enough. At the moment, I'm still relatively calm about the situation.
Do you think that internally within the West Ham hierarchy, Steiden, Lopetegui, Noble, David Sullivan, do you think there's a little bit of panic starting to creep in internally? Because we've done how many player breakdowns? This has been the most player breakdowns we've done on this channel in a summer transfer window, which has been good to get to know, the players in more detail with the data, but we haven't actually executed many of them. And, I know we signed Gil Herme, which is a fantastic signing for the long term. And it's one of the, as you say, one of the most exciting talents in Brazil. You've brought in Foderingham, who's an essential buy for that kind of third choice goalkeeper spot, homegrown. And you've brought in Kilman, who is Lopetegui's first choice centre back, probably top target signing of the summer. So that's been done. That was fantastic. We're now at a situation where we're targeting players like John Duran, tried to get that over the line. We probably will revisit that. And now we're being linked with different types of players of profile, like Fulcrum, who's 31 years old. Wan-Bissaka looks like, again, by the time we're filming this, it might be further along the line, but it looks like that could be happening. We tried to get Kyle Walker-Peters. That didn't happen. We're now trying to sign some central midfielders, the likes of Yusuf Fofana, who's rejected us. So do you think there's a little bit of an internal panic going on? And I know we've got a lot of different bids in for different players that are kind of being kept under the wraps at the moment, or do you just think it's a matter of time, 2 or 3 signings, like you say, could happen in a week or two and we're back on track? This video is sponsored by Emotive. Emotive provide cutting-edge digital services, solutions, and training to companies and businesses of all sizes. Emotive have worked with some fantastic brands in the past, as you can see behind me, the likes of Apple, Google, Tesco, and of course, Babbling Irons. Emotive offer 4 key services, the first being digital solutions, the second being professional training and coaching, the third being fractional experts, and the fourth being AI readiness. We're going to be working with Emotive on our channel to improve how we showcase the data to you guys in our breakdown videos and data analysis videos. If you want to find out more information about how Emotive can work with you, make sure to scan the QR code now, which will take you to emotivetouch.com, where you can find out more details about the company, and the link will be in the description. A massive thank you to Emotive once again for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to it.
Yeah, I think at this stage you can't allow panic. I do think the club will be relatively calm. I don't know whether David Sullivan would, but we've also got to look at as to, well, where were we at this point under David Moyes? You know, we were on the verge of losing our star player in Declan Rice. We hadn't signed the likes of Eddie Alvarez. We hadn't signed Mo Kudus either. So we signed quite late. And if you go further back, Paqueta, we didn't sign until later as well.
Yeah.
So we have previous history is showing that we tend to do business a bit later in the window where maybe deals are a bit more agreeable. We've also had 2 major international tournaments in there as well, which has also slowed things down.
Yeah.
And I think we've had a slight misfortune as well when we was in Brazil. Obviously, Gasova was pretty much going in our direction until they kind of realised what a mistake they made and started changing the goalposts and moving the value up and up, because there was other clubs became interested because the value point was so low because of, as I say, they assumed he was a donkey. That was basically the point that they said about him.
Yeah.
And then with Bruno, we had that deal ready. We were about ready to sign the signature, and then he changed his mind at the 11th hour. Now, we're apparently having conversations again, which would suggest they've come back to West Ham and said, actually, can we revisit this? So I think we've had a level of misfortune. We've also had kind of probably players that we've had conversations with and given us the green light. Clubs maybe overhyping some, like Kyle Walker-Peters. I do think they were massively overvaluing based on the fact that he has a year left.
Yeah.
However, it's their right to do so. And yeah, I think in those respects, some players we have tried to negotiate within our bounds and try to be sensible. And that's led to maybe people talking about us procrastinating and maybe just pay the money, which is not very sensible because we have other targets in such a wide breadth that we need covered in our team.
Do you think Lopetegui's getting frustrated? Because we saw his interview after the Wolves defeat a few days back, and he was pretty blunt about it, wasn't he? He was kind of saying, you know, there was no sugarcoating the questions. He was very direct to the point, saying, you know, this was shit. You know, this wasn't good enough. We've got a lot of work to do. And I think indirectly pointing towards the need for transfer activity to happen. Again, we saw what happened at Wolves, where he walked out after a lack of transfer activity. Again, completely different situation because we've just signed Kilman, his top centre-back target, for 40 million. But do you think he's starting to get a little bit frustrated by the lack of movement because we are now going into August as well?
Yeah, I think he is frustrated. I think unofficially there's been comments before that we wanted 5 or 6 players probably, 2 weeks ago, so they can get more pre-season. Again, as I say, I think there's been slight misfortune in that with Gasova and Bruno. I think had we had that, we would have been 1 less, and I think we'd maybe be that as the team would probably be a little bit more comfortable with where we are. I do think he will be frustrated, but that's because he wants players in now so we can work with them. But also, I think what that interview showed was we saw maybe with David Moyes at times him to kind of deflect a little bit too much and maybe not be as honest, and in some cases allowed for the kind of the West Ham, I guess, message to be put out as to, well, we'll just go again, won't we? We worked really hard, as whereas Lopetegui just outright, no, that was unacceptable. But in so many words and saying that we need a lot of work, there's a lot of work needs to be done in the squad. It's being very pointed and direct via the club channel, directed to the fans, essentially saying, no, we've got a lot of work to do, which in turn makes the fans try and apply a level of pressure as much as we can via social media, etc. That we need to do. And again, it's just a very brutal way of telling, starting a team, they need to up their gear. They need to do more. Although he's obviously aware of what they're doing, but he is telling them they need to do more because he needs players in now. And he's also telling the board not to be obstructions and to actually facilitate that to happen. There needs to be a level of freedom to operate. We saw with Luis Guilherme that freedom and that autonomy was almost taken away from him at one point. and
Yeah.
it was kind of almost vetoed. So there has to be a level of trust. Otherwise,
Yeah.
the whole system is going to fall apart.
I think for me, it's slightly different to say if a manager's been here 3 years and you're slightly delayed on a few transfer targets, because as you say, Lopetegui would have wanted a lot more players in the club for pre-season, because he said it himself. There's a hell of a lot of work to do, not just off the pitch with transfers, but on the pitch, the way he wants to play. It's a completely different mindset and shift at the club, and these players are going to have to buy into that. So if you're bringing in players later on in the transfer window, again, it's going to add to that complexity of dealing with that kind of management period and transition into the season. And we've got some very tough games to start the season as well. Like, we could very much find ourselves come the end of August going into September after the transfer window ends in a slightly precarious situation where, again, things aren't necessarily clicking. You haven't got the players in that you necessarily wanted as well, and then the fans will turn on managers in the modern football very quickly. So it's I wouldn't say, like I said, I wouldn't say it's panic stations, but it's definitely alarm bells ringing, because we're now going into August, and we're definitely behind of the schedule we've put in place in our transfer strategy. 100% we're behind, but again, things happen, goalposts move, players change their mind, things fall through, but that's just the nature of transfers. It's very difficult to get every transfer bang on the money and getting it done in a timely manner. So for me, it's not panic just yet. It's just a wake up call, and it's a massive, massive wake up call, because as you say, we've got our first match in what, 2 or 3 weeks time now of the Premier League season. So there's a lot of work to do, and there's a lot of transfer activity we still need to do. We still haven't got that left winger. We still haven't brought in that striker. We still haven't got that central midfielder. We still haven't got that right back. We still haven't got that centre back to if Seymour or Gerd goes. So I think there's still 4 or 5 very high profile signings that we need to make before we can kind of say, okay, we can relax a bit now with the transfers, just because we need to make it happen. So what did you say, Mike? How long until you start panicking?
I'll give you another 2 weeks, because that then puts us a week before the Premier League season starts.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's the 18th it starts, so it will be 2 weeks. Is just before the season does start. So I would say if we're in the same position we are now in 2 weeks' time, I'm not necessarily bothered about the results or performances in the preseason, because they count for naught once the season starts. But we do need to ensure we're bringing players. The reason why I feel confident is that Lopetegui doesn't suffer fools, as we saw with Villa. That kind of pointed and kind of spiky interview he did, again, also states that will remonstrate directly to the fans and to the board if he feels he's not being supported. And as we saw with with Wolves, if he feels he's been duped and lied to, he won't accept that. It's a very Basque thing as well. They're very kind of direct and very hardworking, and if they feel they're being taken advantage of, then they will just, I'm not dealing with that.
Yeah.
So, and that would be a great embarrassment to David Sullivan if that was to happen and he was to say, do what happened with Wolves. I think they're more faceless and didn't necessarily care as much. David Sullivan would, because of the portrayal that will put out in the press, and there will be a lot of negativity from the fans who are already essentially ready to go for the jugular with that board because of all the concession stuff. I mean, what probably has concerned people in this window is that I know there's been talk of scattergun. I don't think there necessarily is a scattergun. There's a large portion of players, but I think when it turns into a scattergun approach, or a view of scattergun, when you kind of look as to, well, we've looked at Duran, Samu, and now we're looking at Fulkrug. Sure, like the natural progression will be, well, you maybe look at Makuku at Dortmund. Maybe you look at Brobby at Ajax. 2 players you could probably bought in for around about 20 million each, which is the same price as Duran. And you've got 2 very good high prospect players. Brobby, yes, did fail when he went to Germany, and that's probably a bit harsh because he didn't really have that season, but all intents and purposes, he failed, but he's rebuilt himself since going back to Ajax, and we've tended to do pretty well out of them in recent years. And then again, you look at the midfield. But I think with any of those attacking players, they don't feel scattergun to me. They all feel like the same profile. You know, Somerville, inside forward, inside inverted winger, however you want to term it. Score goals. He's flexible, can play inside, can play up front if you need to.
Yeah.
Can score goals. Jota, exactly the same. Wesley Kosova, the same. Adeyemi is slightly different in the sense he's probably more of a natural winger on that left-hand side. But again, gets you goals. He's thick. He's quick, flexible. Midfield, we've only really looked at two profiles. One's a defensive midfielder, and the other one is something that we screamed for Fofana. Which again, if we don't go for Fofana, there's someone like Manu Kone we can go for. Even Matt O'Neill. Matt O'Reilly, not O'Neill.
Yeah.
At Celtic could also be a replacement for, say, the likes of Souček if we was to move him on. Defensively, we've only looked at ball playing centre backs, really. So I don't see the scattergun. I understand where it's coming from because there's such a laundry list of players we've been linked to. However, if you go through them, they're all very similar and they fit a particular type. The only one where I question is Wan-Bissaka because we've looked at predominantly attacking fullbacks in Belanova, in Kyle Walker-Peters, in Mazraoui. Wan-Bissaka is not an attacking fullback.
No.
I know many would maybe argue against that, but all I would suggest is you watch Manchester United when they play Darlow at right back and then watch them when they play Wan-Bissaka at right back. They play completely differently. So that's the only one that I've come to question. However, again, it was a player that apparently Lopetegui liked when he was at Wolves. Potentially that's a hangover from that. And he's wants to or thinks he can coach that attacking side into him. Maybe. But yes, I can understand people's frustration. I can understand people saying we should be concerned. However, I think it's maybe too early to go with that because the window is still open and we don't know really, if we're truthfully honest, how much we're missing until we actually see us playing competitively.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Well, let us know down below. What do you think? Are you panicking yet? When do you press the panic button? And are you pretty chill about the situation going into August with the last month of the transfer window now in place? So yeah, make sure to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel for more content. And Mike, until the next one.
Come on, you irons.